Gosh, I almost cried there at the end. Shit. I'm very vulnerable right now. I'll cry at anything. Welcome back to our Fertile Tea Time series where we're spilling the wins, the losses, and the laughs that come along with just trying to get pregnant. I'm Whitney, your resident fertility guide, and today I am pumped to welcome Ashley, a former client of mine and new mom, who's sharing her experience recovering from a devastating loss and how a radical lifestyle shift, we're talking career, homes, and health, helped her prepare her mind and body for the biggest work of its life. Let's get started. Welcome, Ashley. I am so excited to have you here, and I'm so excited to share your story with everybody because it's incredible how we landed here. So why don't you start? Tell us about who you are. I already said your name's Ashley, but where do you live? Who do you live with? What do you do? Who are you?
Yeah, I'm Ashley Lizzie, and I live in Syracuse, Indiana, with my husband and my baby and our dog. And I am currently a stay-at-home mom.
Tell us a little bit about when you and your husband decided to get pregnant. How did that, was it something you're just like, yep, we're ready right now? Or was it something that you guys planned for a while?
Yeah, so we met a little bit later in life. We were in our 30s and we knew we wanted a family. That was our whole goal. As soon as we met each other, it was kind of like the fairy tale, fell in love, couldn't wait to get married. And we always knew that the goal was to build a family together. And so because we were just a little bit older, once we did get married, we thought, well, if it happens, it happens. That would be wonderful. And we're not trying. And that's how we started. But with the hopes that we would start our family sooner than later. So that started our journey. So that we got married in 2020.
Good time. What month in 2020?
2020. Perfect timing to get married.
Started right in the fire.
Yeah, we were kind of like this little fun reprieve for everyone who had been locked indoors. We had a tiny outdoor ceremony. So yeah, we thought, well, we're still going to get married. We did it in a backyard and it was just perfect. So I think it was probably 6 months into nothing happening at all. And I thought, well, this is really strange. And the clock is ticking. All I ever heard once I hit my 30s is the clock is ticking for you. And so I think I'm a little type A, and I started to think I have to control this situation.
A little.
So I started, kind of seeking out help. And I say help because I turned to some doctors and things like that. I had a doctor legitimately tell me, keep eating cupcakes. You're going to need to store that fat, and eventually you're going to get pregnant. I promise you that was the conversation. No one wanted to run a blood test on me for an entire year. You need to go try for a year. I was checked and told, you do not have endometriosis. You have no fertility barriers. All of your fertility blood work, when they finally did run it, looks perfect. You just need to relax. You need to have a glass of wine. Make sure you're eating cupcakes. This was what I was getting for a year. I just kind of took matters into my own hands. I started Googling, which can be, it's a double-edged sword when you do that sort of thing. But I started seeking out my own kind of path. This is what I know about my body. This is what I know about my lifestyle. Why is it not, producing optimal fertility? And so in researching, I found a billion different answers that were super overwhelming. I do prefer a holistic approach as much as possible. I need to be able to be comfortable with who I'm talking to. And also because at that point for a year, I was told that I was crazy. I was told that, you just need to relax. And as much relaxing, as many vacations, as much wine as I drank, it still wasn't. So I came across you on Instagram of all places, and your approach to things and the comfort that you brought in the fact that maybe I'm not so crazy. I truly didn't believe I was infertile, but everything that I found and doctors kept making me feel like I was infertile.
Yes. All right. So let's talk about maybe at the time, can you give us an example of where you were at health-wise? Like what was going on? Like, did you have perfect cycles? Like, can you tell us a little bit about your own, like, almost like fertility score is kind of how I like to think about it. So let's start with cycles.
My cycles had been regular, but they were not perfect, meaning I had super heavy periods that were extremely painful, but they were regular. And so I was, it was just I had been checked for endometriosis, told you absolutely do not have endo. You know, you're right on track with, you're in the range of how many days it should be. Has some people just heavy bleed, you know, things like that. PMS was off the charts. You know, that's normal because you're just a woman that PMS is and things like that. So essentially I thought I was pretty normal and I dealt with the pain. I mean, I remember I would be at work and I would just stand up because I couldn't sit down. I was in so much pain, and then standing up hurt so bad. And it was like, I was not able to function on some of those days, you know, the really heavy days.
So
So
it was impacting your quality of life.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But that's normal.
Totally normal. Totally normal. You're a woman. You have to deal with it. And that was it. So.
Okay. So we had some, what we recognized pretty early on, some red flags, and got to work on some of that stuff as much as we could holistically, diet, lifestyle. Were there any big shifts that you made during that time?
Definitely, you know, my food intake, the quality and quantity, and what I thought was dieting was actually just destroying, you know, cortisol and hormones and things like that. And, you know, whether it was fasting and just drinking coffee or not eating carbs at all, I tried all these things and nothing ever made it better. And then when you were able to put it down on paper and make it really palatable in the sense of it's not hard to do the right thing for your body, just no one ever teaches you how to do that. So that huge shift happened when I started logging my food with you, and it became clear to me this isn't hard. You know, I love to cook. I do enjoy healthy food. I just needed to move some of the puzzle pieces around.
Yeah.
You know, and you were able to make that very clear with your fertile plate method and things like that, incorporating fats where they needed to be and not being afraid of them. I just wouldn't have put it together myself because I was told fat is bad, carbs are bad, you know, things like that. But for a woman with a cycle, that's not the case, you know.
Exactly. Well, and I'd like to add in here as well, it is not that, because I think we've got this idea that because there's so much nutrition information and fertility information out there, that we should be able to put this together ourselves. The information is there. I'm just one Google search away from figuring out what the key is going to be. But the thing is, when you're the one dealing with it, when you're the one struggling with it, there's just so much, and you're so emotionally tied to all of it. It is really, really hard. And I would even add, if not impossible, to put together and see kind of where the pitfalls are, or maybe where the struggle is, and I figure out where the support needs to be.
Yeah. And that, not having help, I was stressing myself out and making the matter worse. Right. So being able to say, Whitney, here's everything that's going on, and, you know, kind of lay it out for you, and you help me move those pieces around. It took off that weight of added stress, which is not good for fertility either. Yeah. So there was a mental component even to what I was putting in my body and how I was feeling it and things like that.
And I would love at this point to be like, and then everything was fine. It would be so nice if we just got to button up that story and put a little bow on it at that point. But the story we're sharing today is not an easy one. It has not been an easy process. And so the bright spots when we first started working together, like seeing those changes in diet, were amazing. And seeing like good cycle changes and getting really consistent ovulation signs, like all of those beautiful signs. But can you walk us through kind of like what happened next?
Yeah. So it was, I would love this testimonial to start with. Literally September of 2021, we started working together. In October of 2021, I found out I was pregnant. And I remember I messaged you and said, this is the greatest thing ever. All I had to do was talk to you one time.
That's it.
And, it was surreal. It was, like I said, it was just a dream come true. Very soon into the pregnancy, I miscarried. And there was no answer as to why. There was no answer. There was no medical advice. It was just, this happens, and this happens, more than you know, and it's hard, but there's, this happens for no reason all the time. And I just didn't believe that. So I had no idea that kind of signing on with you and starting the journey with you, how much I needed you in so many different moments other than just conceiving.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of started our whole journey together working through this miscarriage. And, you even provided an entire meal plan, post miscarriage and how to heal and kind of fuel your body to heal and things like that. So we worked through that. And then everything kind of the trickle effect started to happen. So I had gotten COVID in 2020, kind of recovered, but I did have it very bad.
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
that kind of lingering. And at the time, no one would acknowledge that there was a potential that was a burden,
Yeah.
even when you had healed. So that had happened. I miscarried. That led me to a new OBGYN who absolutely, he's fantastic, but one session with him, and I found out I was diagnosed with endometriosis. So immediately signed up for that surgery. I just knew, okay, check. We've got it. We've got it. Why here, right? We've got an issue that I can tackle. So went through that process of the surgery, got COVID again. So got
I'm
COVID.
not laughing at you, obviously. It's just like,
I
fuck.
steps. It's insane to how it, where we are today. But so going in for the surgery, I did test positive again for COVID, had to push off the surgery, finally had it. And it was, I was a stage 2, but it was everywhere. So there are 4 stages of endo. I was stage 2, but it was a pretty heavy stage 2. Worked with you on healing again through and kind of shifting some things that would make sense.
For anyone listening, if you've gone through an endometriosis surgery, the likelihood of reoccurrence is quite high. And so what we did was we did work on identifying foods and habits that would reduce inflammation, making sure estrogen detoxification was clear, helping with insulin resistance, any thyroid imbalance, all of those things. So our focus was still fertility, but also reduction of regrowth was a big focus as well.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, you kind of put this playbook together for me that was, okay, we did have a miscarriage. We've had COVID, potentially lingering COVID. Now we're healing from endometriosis and the surgery. We're continuing this journey. And at this point, I'm thinking I'm the healthiest person on the face of the earth.
Yep. I could verify that. Like, you really did knock it out of the park. I said jump, you said how high. And
yeah.
remind me if I'm wrong. I feel, if I'm remembering properly, there was a break there where you stopped trying for a couple months that summer, wasn't it?
We
I
did.
think
There was,
there was a point where the stress of the 2-week wait cycles was just doing more harm than good. And
yeah.
so I think that summer, after everything, we had decided to take a few months off.
Yep. Yeah. Taking a break, was important, but also coming out of that surgery, that was a pretty, I was in surgery for 3 hours. It was a pretty big deal. I knew that I just need a break. I need to, everything I've been doing, stress causes endo, eating causes endo, all of these things that contribute to endo. I needed a break to mentally make sure that I was not going to just put myself back in the same position again.
Can you talk a little bit about what it was like choosing to take a break? Because I know a lot of women who are at the point that you were at, but they feel like if they are going to take a break, that it's taking steps backwards, that they're wasting more time, because we've constantly got that monkey on our back about, oh, you can't wait too long. You got to get pregnant before you're 35, like all of these things. And so it's not as easy as just listening to yourself and being like, I'm really tired, I need a break. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was terrified. I felt like I was, exactly like you had mentioned, timing was so important. It was do it as fast as you can, because you hit that 35 mark. This is it. You're going to be, down a whole nother rabbit hole. And so I was really terrified. I felt defeated. I felt like I'd given up. I felt, each of those months that went by, I thought, there we go. Just ruined another, got a month older, and it was just this thought process. But my body needed that so badly. I wouldn't have been able to lift the stress off had I not just sat back and stopped panicking for months at a time.
And I want to add in here, I remember when you were closing out of that, because we had kind of set up like, I think a 3-month like estimation of the break. And I remember when we were coming to the end of that, you were even a little bit like, we had to work through some fear about starting again.
Oh yeah.
And
Mhm.
the anxiety associated with trying that
Mhm.
had been your experience previously.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I had failed, and gotten a break from failing, and I
Hmm.
was going to jump back into something I just really thought was not possible for me. In that time period, we did work on a lot of the mental part of, um, how to manage bitterness and how to manage expectations and how to manage that disappointment and how to manage enjoying my marriage. And so it was like I got all of these mental tools, that I went into kind of the next phase of trying with.
Yeah. And so and I think, I even think that we've called it like trying light. Like, if you want to, we're going to. And if you don't want to, we're not going to force it just because. And that feels very uncomfortable. It also, when we talked about that control factor, and that's something we both share, the control factor, like that piece, just like as soon as something isn't, going the way we want it to, the first thing we do is just like hold on tighter. And
Mm.
so we went in, I don't, I can't remember, like conception light or something. There was a name that we came up with. So walk us through what those next few months looked like.
Yeah. So at a certain point, my OB started to kind of realize it wasn't happening as well. And
Mhm.
so we were starting to consider, okay, the IUI route, the Clomid route,
Medical interventions. Hmm.
yeah, the interventions. And that was a whole scary part in itself. And so going back into it and just trying, but not mentally putting myself through the pressure. We talked a lot about just the pressure itself
Yeah.
and not putting that pressure on every single part of it. And when I stopped doing that, because like I said, the type A thing, for me, it was, well, this didn't happen right, or I didn't eat right today, or
Yeah.
I did drink to the point of a hangover, which, doesn't happen often, but the pressure of those things was just making everything worse. And so by removing that pressure, I stopped feeling like I was just constantly failing, and I stopped feeling like my body was failing me. And I started understanding that no, your body's protecting you. Thank you, body. You are protecting me. You protected that life from coming onto this earth because it wasn't ready. You protected your body through all these traumatic things. And I started just really appreciating the fact that if I treat my body well, it's going to eventually respond. And that was just a huge shift for me mentally that let me kind of carry on and go into the next phase of trying.
Yeah. And it what I was really impressed with is moving, because you'd already done fertility drugs before. You had had a pretty bad experience with it. Wasn't a very empowering experience. There, you wanted to do it because you wanted to get pregnant, but there was very little feeling good about it. And so going into it the second time, I was really impressed. You were in the driver's seat the whole time. You decided what month you wanted to do it. You decided what drug, not drugs, like obviously you're not a prescriber, but you worked with your doctor on how you wanted to approach it. And just watching you go through it the first time versus the next phase that you chose to do that. You were ready. We had a lot of discussions about moving forward, not because you have to, and taking that time piece out of it. And that's one thing that sticks in my mind. I remember you talking to me and be like, this is what I want to do now.
Yeah, I had for so long thought the minute I felt comfortable starting IUI, because we were going to start IUI and then move into IVF if it
Yeah.
didn't work, I thought the minute you admit that you want to do that is the minute you have admitted that you're infertile. And I thought, you know, you can't possibly be infertile. You can't possibly do these things because you don't need to do these things. You've prepared yourself so much more. And I had, by removing the pressure and taking care of my body, I had somehow found peace with, okay, interventions, they're necessary. They're necessary to get to your goal. So I started that. I was so ready to go. I thought this is going to be great. I've optimized everything for this to work, and it didn't work. And
Mm-hmm.
it didn't just not work. It worked in reverse. I mean,
Yes.
it was very strange. I started, the shots in my belly for IUI, and I was on all these pills and doing the
A
process.
lot of monitoring too. I remember that part. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, ton of monitoring, doctor's appointments all the time. And it not only didn't work, it didn't even get us to the end phase of the procedure. We never actually did a full IUI ever in all of the months and all of the shots because it just wasn't working. And my doctor, who is more on the holistic side, he wanted to start really exploring the why as well. And so all together, we all started exploring the why.
Can you share some of the physical side effects that you had started experiencing around this time too?
So I had been really, really sick during cold and flu season, like extremely sick
For
for,
months.
yeah,
It just never seemed to end.
it just never ended. And kind of bounced out of cold and flu season. And then, spring came along and some really strange things started happening. And I started experiencing pain in the sense of, that my shirt hurt on my skin. It was really strange. Or if I was driving my car and I just happened to graze the steering wheel the wrong way, my knuckles hurt. And these really weird sensations of pain that were completely, there was no explanation for.
No. Mm-mm.
And on top of that, just kept getting sick. I kept getting sick.
For a while, I remember long COVID was
Yes.
they were like, well, that's just long COVID. And it was very much a sorry about you kind of thing.
Absolutely. And at this point, I'm starting to see doctor after doctor after
That
doctor.
was a really bad appointment.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Long COVID. Let me know if you ever find the cure.
Yeah.
What? Extreme brain fog.
Mm-hmm.
I could not put sentences together. I couldn't remember where my glasses were, which cabinet my glasses were in my kitchen. Just really weird stuff. And then the pain started to kind of spread through my bones. It hurt to get out of bed. And then
It felt like you had a fever, but you didn't have a fever. Like
yeah,
that.
yes.
I remember that part. It was like chills, like body aches.
Oh yeah. Body aches full on, face flushing, couldn't ever cool down ever. A lot of hair loss. And then that summer came and my tonsils blew up and never went back down. And they were covered in white spots, typical with strep. And I was tested for strep. I can't even tell you how many times. I was tested for COVID, flu, strep. So many times, everything was negative.
But you did feel better for a little while. You got some reprieve right after you would finish a round of antibiotics. And this is where it became very confusing. And I love that I have this like sideline view of kind of what happened, because it was, even as a practitioner, watching all of this unfold, despite eating well, sleeping well, taking care of yourself, your health was declining. And there was no real explanation, because as soon as you did a round of antibiotics prescribed by your physician, you would feel better for a week or two.
Yep.
And then it would slowly come back. So it was very confusing.
Yeah, it was really strange. And, it just got to the point where I went and saw a specialist and he said, well, you just need to take your tonsils out. And I just thought, that's not the answer, but that can't possibly be the answer. And one day I walked downstairs in our home and, we had this beautiful home that we had bought right before we got married. It was our dream home.
Yeah.
It, stunning. And I walked downstairs and I slipped on our wood floors and I almost fell. I had just woken up. What in the world? And there's water everywhere. And I thought, well, okay, this is the middle floor of the house. This isn't even the top floor. What is happening? We had water. It was raining and water was pouring into our kitchen. And it was a spot where the second floor was not above that floor. It was just roof line above that spot. So obviously, quick investigation, we learned there was a hole, in the roof. And strange, new house, beautiful. Yeah. Okay, things happen. So quickly get a bucket, clean everything up. And it just hit me. I just thought, well, where there's water coming through a ceiling, it has to have been coming through for a while to break through an entire ceiling.
Yep.
And I thought, that's really strange. I wonder if there's mold. And so the process began. It had been raining into our home for a very long time. The house, it was new to us. We had bought it, but the house was 30 years old. And no matter how beautiful it looked and how well decorated it was and how, how big it was or whatever the case, there was mold. I had started to search my symptoms.
Yep.
And everything matched. Everything all came together in that moment. There was a problem, and it was mold.
Yep.
And so I had been working with an integrative doctor for a long time. And so I just called her and I said, do you do mycotoxin testing? She said, yeah, we'll do it. So let's just do it. Let's just get it out of the way. And then she called me and she said, we've got a big problem. Your mold toxin level is off the charts.
How'd you feel getting that?
I was terrified. I was devastated. And, of course, I went down the Google rabbit hole, and it is absolutely a fertility barrier.
Yes.
And it can cause miscarriage and, not being able to conceive, high inflammation, all of the things working. Working so hard.
You were beside the dictionary of mold toxicity. There's your picture.
Yeah. I mean, all of these weird things, were all related to that. And just nobody, it's just not, at the time, I feel like it's a little bit more mainstream now.
I think it is too. I was going to say, I've seen so much education around it. The testing is more widely available now. Yep. I'm seeing it more in practice. I'm using it in my own practice. Like there's so many shifts that have happened over the last couple of years. And it might just be me that I'm more aware of it, but I think culturally we're understanding it a little bit more.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was nothing anyone would have ever thought of before. I was told fibromyalgia. I was told I had these allergies, like all these things that just, I was working so hard on making sure my body was, taken care of and fueled well and things like that none of that made sense. So we started a protocol. We started a treatment, and my husband and I both, because he was exposed to it as well, he didn't have the same symptoms, but some people don't have the same symptoms. And so for the sake of his fertility as well, we both started treatment, yep. Which means we both had to take a huge pause from trying to conceive. So here we go again. More time.
Another break.
Yeah. Yeah.
While also renovating your house to remove it. So going through this pretty intense physical protocol to detoxify, bind, and remove all of the exposure that you had internally, also removing it from your external environment as well. It was a big undertaking.
Yeah. Yeah. Mold is, you don't heal if it's around. And so we had to have it physically removed out of the home, not just cleaned. It had to be professionally, taken care of. And once the professionals come in, lo and behold, there's always more. Where there's a little bit, there's always more. And, I emphasize the fact that this home was a beautiful home, and it was, in a very nice neighborhood, and it was a large home. I say that because a lot of people think it can't possibly happen in that kind of a circumstance. We surely thought that, and that wasn't the case. When we started, when the inspections really started, real inspections, it was in a lot of areas of the home. Just from past, before we owned the home, there was a toilet overflow. Well, instead of, the ceiling underneath, instead of taking care of it and drying it out, they just painted the ceiling to cover up the spot. So, it can happen even if you don't have a rundown, dilapidated home or, a known leaky pipe. These things can happen, and if they're not taken care of within 24 hours, mold can start to grow. So it is a scary thought to think, well, that could really happen anywhere, but it is true, and it was true for us for sure.
So we got through? We're doing the mold detox. We're doing the protocol, all that fun stuff, which was not a fun time.
No. Treatment makes things worse before it gets better, right? So basically when you go through this treatment, it has to break it all up, release it into your system, and then you have to have it pulled out of your system. So I became exponentially sicker. I missed a lot of work. There were days I couldn't even walk. I mean, I got way sicker before I got better. And I did have to shop around a couple of doctors. Dr. Jill Krista, she is, completely educated in mold illness, and I started working with her. So I'm optimizing, my fertility with you. I'm eating right. I'm fueling my body. I'm on the right supplement track, and I can't even tell you, month or two, I was back. My brain fog was gone. My pain was completely gone. Um, it's really overwhelming, but I can work out again. Everything that I had been experiencing was gone. Yeah. And, even if I didn't want to take a pause from trying, my body was saying, you are pausing. We are getting you better. You are taking a pause. We are getting rid of this inflammation. And again, I leaned into my body is protecting me. My body is protecting me so that we can have a healthy child and be healthy with that child. And like I said, within barely even 2 months, it was incredible. And what was great was when I was working with this doctor who was well versed in mold illness, she knew not only do we need to do this protocol, we need to make sure our cycles come back and things like that. So, I was working kind of in all different realms on making sure I could conceive.
And how long did she recommend waiting after you had started the protocol, or was it after you finished the protocol?
So she wanted me to wait 3 months after I finished treatment. And on the last day of treatment, I got my pregnancy test.
Yeah.
It was positive. Because I just thought, it's not happening anyway. We threw caution.
I remember we actually had a conscious conversation about this because there was your cycles as you had been going through the mold protocol were progressively getting more regulated. And
Yes.
I just remember sitting there, and there you had already ovulated. We were in the 2-week wait period because you had copious amounts of fertile cervical fluid, and you went for it. And I was like, okay, we're going for it. We're doing it. And because I always everybody gets to take the reins in their own journey, and you follow your gut instinct, and you're the star of the show. You're the decision maker. And so, but I do remember sitting there, and I was like, well, okay, because I was looking at your chart, and it looked so good. It looked so damn good. And you messaged me I think it was 24 hours later you took the test.
Yeah.
Something like that. You took the test, and I was just like, oh man.
Well,
in the best way possible, obviously.
I mean, on
Mm-hmm.
paper, I looked like now the even more healthiest person in the world. Checking my liver. We were checking, we were just checking every single thing in the body that could pertain to inflammation and, mold illness and things like that. And it just, I seemed incredibly healthy on paper. And I remember you and I had our monthly call, and I turned on the camera, and you're like, what's going on? I'm like, at work, my little lunch
With
break.
terrible lighting, I might add. That lighting was absolute shite. Fluorescent.
But you had just said, I think you just need to take a pregnancy test. I'm like, why? You're crazy. This doesn't happen. We're 2
years in at this point.
Yeah, literally 2 years in. And I said, fine, I'll go take it, because I was going to do just some maintenance cleanup with a couple of supplements that would not have been good had I been pregnant. Mm-hmm. To kind of end the treatment.
That's right. You were going to put an order in, or something was going to start the next day. And I was like, I really feel like we should take a test before that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought, fine. I wasn't even going into it really nervous, because I just thought, well, it's just not happening yet.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, it was positive. And so it was, it was crazy, because it was 2 years exactly to the week that I had gotten my first positive pregnancy test, with the child that I had miscarried. And so it was just shocked, and obviously I had not been doing any sort of interventions because we had paused for treatment. Mm-hmm. So we had conceived completely naturally at that point.
Yeah. Oh, I got goosebumps. And I think when you say 2 years, everybody's initial reaction is going to be, oh my God, that took forever. And the thing I always say with fertility, we cannot rush healing. We can't rush your body. We can only support it. Yes, we can want things to move faster, but we can't control it. You can't control your fertility. You can influence it. And yes, the 2 years, no one wants to wait that long when you're ready to have a family. but the growth that you experienced, I mean, physically, mentally, emotionally, you were a different person. By the time you got pregnant the second time, you were a different person.
Yeah. And, had I not taken this approach, I don't know if it would have ever happened. I could have had all the interventions in the world, which I was ready to do. I was ready to do. I could have had all the interventions in the world and they wouldn't have worked. If I really hadn't have dug that deep and supported, I think fueling your body is the very first step to supporting all of the things I had to go through. I couldn't have done it had I been just eating fast food or, like we had coffee just for breakfast, or, I couldn't have done it had my hormones not been lined up as much as they possibly could have been. I would not have supported myself through treatment to get, so to that point of health. To make sure you have a healthy child on this earth, you absolutely have to make sure you are healthy. You are pouring from a full cup, because it's not just about, it's just not about them or conceiving them. In 9 months, you better be healthy enough to take care of them. You know what I mean? Like
there's that whole rest of your life after part.
Yeah. And it's so true. You can't pour from an empty cup. And that's for a mother's health. I think that's more prevalent than, anything else. So yeah.
Wow. That was such good advice. I got chills. Such good advice. And actually, I would like to know, and I'm sure everybody, well, I already know, but I'm sure people who are listening would like to know, because you got pregnant sooner than you were planning or before you kind of finished everything, was there any issues with the pregnancy?
Not one. And as, like I said, a very type A woman trying to conceive for so long and having all of these hurdles for 9 months, I sat there thinking, there's going to be a hurdle. There's got to be a hurdle. And
the shoe's got to drop somewhere.
Exactly. And, after a miscarriage, especially, there's got to be a hurdle. And I had lined everything up and I had done the work. I had put in the time. I had taken the pressure off. It was an incredibly healthy experience, an incredibly healthy pregnancy, a very healthy baby boy, and a healthy me. And there was no hurdle.
Ashley, obviously, I mean, we've had many conversations. Getting to work with you is a highlight in my career, and getting to witness you become a mom was the best thing ever. And he's beautiful, and you're beautiful. The whole thing. I'm just going to get all gushy. I'll get all the gushy things. I want to thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story. I know that there's a lot of hurdles and there's a lot of hard things that happened, and there's a lot of women who are sitting where you were who will appreciate this. And we appreciate your time so much.
I truly got to a point where I didn't think it could happen. And every time it was like our monthly meetings, thank God that day rolled around that you and I got to sit on that call together, because my hope came back. My knowledge came back, the knowledge of, okay, you need to keep doing this. You need to, it was like, you always had an educational piece for me, and I always had a tool. And, for years, that's why I kept going. And so I thank you. I mean, it's the greatest thing, being able to conceive my child, and the fact that he's healthy and that I'm healthy, So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. Gosh, I almost cried there at the end. Shit. I'm very vulnerable right now. I'll cry at anything. Now, if Ashley's story has you inspired and you'd like to learn more about the specific steps that she took to transform her fertility, then this is your invitation to check out my Fertility Reset Masterclass below. Inside, I'm sharing the systemic barriers that are stopping you from getting pregnant and teaching you the proven framework I use with my one-to-one clients to get them in a good fertile flow and grow the family of their dreams. I'll see you in the next one.